Right. I think we're on. Well, thank you so much for coming to Cheyenne's forum. And this is Tom. Tom, how are you?
I'm fine, Cheyenne. How are you?
Very good. Thank you. So glad to see you again. It's a week past and we have so many things happened in America and all over the world.
Right.
Yeah. And today, I think we can talk about three. I have three questions for you, actually. But before we start today's show, I'd like to again introduce Tom. He is a former FBI assistant director, and he worked in FBI for almost 30 years and have lots
Correct.
of experience working in domestic and also international. So thank
Right.
you again for coming. And then for the question of today, three questions. First is about 2024. Lots of people said 2024 will be the last battle of the United States. Do you agree with that? And why? That's question one. Question two is about our dear Governor Newsom in California. What we know is he invited Mr. Xi from China to come to San Francisco to attend the meeting, APAC. And what he did is he cleaned up the San Francisco downtown area, which was the ghost town before for years. And people asking for the mayor, for the governor to pay attention on the situation of San Francisco. Nobody do anything. But after she decided to come, Newsom and the mayor just clean up everything. So what do you think about that?
Well,
And
first of all,
that's the
oh,
second
I'm sorry.
question.
But
Okay, let's go back to, and the third question is about another mayor, Adam in New York. Something happened to him. So we're talking about uh, two officials. One is Governor Newsom, one is Mayor Adams, and see what happened with them. And the first question, let's jump back to the first question is 2024 the last battle of the United States and why?
every presidential election that comes up, the candidates always says, this is the most important. This is the one, and we hear that again. Now, this time it's very important because, as you and your audience know, the United States has been slowly going to the left,
Right.
slowly in the direction that you left: Marxism,
Mm,
socialism, all of
mhm,
that, an authoritarian government.
mhm,
And we've been going that way now, where opponents of the president get
mhm,
locked up or get prosecuted, like Donald Trump is now, and other conservatives. We're
mhm,
also, so it's been more conservatives than liberals that have been prosecuted by the government in the last 4, 5, 6 years. So I think that because of that tendency of going more and more to the left, which for most Americans means Democratic Party,
mhm,
that the more power the Democrats get, especially with illegal immigration and more people pouring into the government of the United States, estimating 8 million people at least have
right.
illegally entered in the last 3 years. Now,
Mhm.
some other people estimate it could be as high as 20 million people. So they're
20.
saying all of these people pouring in are not loyal to the United States. They're
Mhm,
liable to not be able to assimilate, to become Americans. So if
mhm,
they're coming from Syria or Africa or other countries,
mhm.
Venezuela, Cuba, Russia, wherever they're coming from, they come here and they want the US to change to be like their country, which
Right.
they left.
Mhm,
So there's a big concern on the part of Americans that they are coming here not to be American. And no one's asking anybody to give up your traditions or any of that.
mhm.
My background, my grandparents came here from Mexico. So we still, at Christmas, we would do pinatas, hang the bag of
Okay.
candy, and the little kids try to break the bag.
Uh-huh.
So we did we still had customs like that, but no mistake that we were Americans. And my grandparents that came here said, we didn't come here so you could be like Mexico or Spain. We came here so you could become Americans. Now, right. The downside of that is my grandmother, especially, that I was very close to, she lived just a few blocks from us. I was at her house several days a week, and she was pretty insistent that we not learn Spanish because she was afraid it would diminish our ability in English. It would hurt us later in our professions or in going to college or university. Now they know that you can learn, as a little kid, you can learn many languages and be very good in every one. But at that time, in the 1950s, they didn't know that. So it was very difficult to convince her to help me learn Spanish, which I learned a great deal, but it was hard. She didn't really want to help us learn Spanish. Now, so now this is like others that have come from China in the last 20 years.
Right.
They didn't come here. Now, they've experienced, the communist regime, the CCP of China. So they didn't come here to want the United States to become an authoritarian country, like being run by the CCP. Came here for freedom, opportunity, freedom of speech, and to become Americans, but also maintain the Chinese heritage. Nobody asked you to give up your culture or those kind of holidays and things that you enjoyed that were typically Chinese holidays, not communist, basically. So that's kind of the same thing here. So anyway, the 2024 election will be a very interesting one because we're going to have, many times the politicians are very close. They're very moderate. Some are more liberal, some are more conservative. But this year, it appears that the Democratic Party is going to have a very liberal candidate. Now, that could be Donald Trump, or it might be Gavin Newsom. It might be somebody else, but they are not going to be conservatives. They're going to be progressive. On the Republican side, so far, Donald Trump is the front runner.
Right.
And most of the Chinese Americans that I know are very pro-Trump, very pro because of the policies that he had, how well the United States was doing during his presidency, unemployment, inflation, opportunity, energy production.
Right.
So all of those things have really diminished under Joe Biden. And I have said this, and it's my opinion, so people could disagree, but I've said Joe Biden is one of the greatest leaders the United States has ever had.
Right.
Because he has been able to take the United States so far downhill in 3 years. Nobody else, all of our worst presidents combined, didn't do that much damage to the country as he's done in a short time. My opinion. But then look at the numbers. Look at what inflation is. Look at what the various indicators economically, growth and production, efficiency, all of those things. Energy production, which he basically killed our energy industry. So many of the things that Joe Biden has done from day one as president have had a very, very negative impact. None of them as serious, I think, as opening our borders to no border control, so that anybody that wants to can just walk in. And again, some of the estimates are 8 to 20 million people have come in illegally.
Sure. So let me ask you a question, Tom. You talk about Biden. You talk about his bad record. Do you think it's because he's unable to do it, or his intention to do it?
I think the intention. He talked about during the campaign, he was going to kill the energy industry. He was going to all this. Now, I'll agree that his intellectual capacity is greatly diminished, but he was never that smart in the first place.
Yeah.
So he's widely known to be not bright, not intellect, not a good thinker.
Right.
But now he's in a position. So there are other progressive leaders behind the scenes pushing him. Could be ex-President Obama. Could be others. It could be Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, or Jake Sullivan, All of these people were in the Biden administration. So, I mean, in the Obama administration. So Biden had brought them over to implement those policies. So who is the actual leader all the way, I don't know. But Biden's the president. And if he's that feeble and that incapacitated intellectually, he shouldn't be running. He shouldn't be elected.
So I'm just thinking that if the Democrat still in power after 2024, so what's going to happen to this country?
Well, I think the policies, the road we're on will be the same. We'll just stay on it. And I think become more and more of a socialist country. More so than we are now. Now, years ago, even 4 or 5 years ago, President Trump said at the time, the U.S. will never become a socialist country.
Right.
We are well on the way already. So I disagree. We could become a socialist country. We could be a communist, socialist, authoritarian, like the CCP. We are well on the way to that now.
It all depends on who is the leader or who are the leaders.
Exactly right. Exactly right, I believe.
So last 100 years, we saw so many different crises in this country, like 1930s, 1960s, 1990s. And what is the difference between these crises and today's crisis? So
during those times of crisis, let's go back 150 years or more to the Civil War, where the United States almost split in half. Now, President Lincoln and the Union Army credited with defeating the Southern Army, the Confederates. Now, when they were defeated, the country came back together. Lincoln's policy was going to be forgive and let's start working together as Americans. As long as the generals and the leaders of the Confederacy gave up their arms, gave up the war, and agreed to go back to being regular Americans and work together. And Lincoln's policies, even though he was assassinated basically the last month of the war in August of 1865, April of 1865, the policies that he generally wanted did come to pass. Now, the second president after Lincoln, Ulysses S. Grant, was the leading general of the American Civil War for the North, for the Union Army at the end. And he basically said, we're going to forgive if the Southerners, the Confederate generals, if all of those people would agree to go back to being U.S. citizens for the whole country, then they would be basically forgiven for the insurrection, for the Confederacy. And they were generally. But
again.
And the idea was, and by the way, elections during the Civil War were not canceled. You've heard people say now, oh, maybe we should cancel, or maybe Biden or Obama or somebody should give the orders, give the recommendation, cancel the upcoming election. We had elections during the Civil War. Lincoln was reelected at that time. And we had elections in World War I. We had elections in World War II. So those times, the U.S. didn't cancel elections. We went forward. The idea is, no matter what that crisis will be, we can make it. We can work together and we will get through the crisis. That included in the 20s and 30s, the Great Depression. Then in the early 40s, World War II. Then following World War II, until the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, we had the Cold War. With us, U.S. versus the Soviet Union. Then in 91, the Soviet Union dissolves, becomes the Russian Federation, and there was generally peace for many years. So the things that are happening now are not worse than what we've overcome in the past.
It's not worse than that.
No, I don't believe.
Okay. So you have a confidence, no matter.
They could be worse. Well, they could get worse, depending on the election and how bad that goes. But hopefully it won't. And hopefully the U.S. citizens, American people, will realize next 1 year from this month, 2024, in November, when we have the next election, that hopefully they'll realize we need to get the country back on track, be strong, get as many of these systems back working efficiently like they used to work again. Right. Now you hear Trump's slogan, "Make America Great Again."
Again.
Exactly. So he's saying America was great. We need to do it again. And I would agree that that's a good slogan. We need to do it again, bring these systems online, restore the military, but get rid of this wokeism. Yeah. Now, wokeism is basically that you get picked for a job because of the color of your skin,
right,
or because of your race, or because of if you're gay or lesbian or transsexual or all of these things. And the most important criteria is no longer merit. Are you the best person for that job? Right. Not just the darkest skin or the lightest skin or any of the other things. And that's what wokeism is. Now, most Americans, the ones I know, are pretty much anti-wokeism. They realize that it's reduced the quality of the U.S. military, of our government. Some of the people in Biden's cabinet really have no business being there.
Right. It seems to me, Tom, there is a force, a very strong force, try to destroy American as a country. Do you see that?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what we've had, go back about 10 or 20 years, we had the World Economic Forum.
Right.
The business leaders that went to those meetings based in Davos, Switzerland. And the World Economic Forum decided that the United States is too powerful. We need to get the other countries, raise them up to have their economy stronger, these countries to be stronger. After 10 or 20 years, they realized they can't do it. These other countries, whether it's because they have too much corruption or other issues, were not able to elevate themselves and their economy to the level of the United States. So that started the globalists, as they're known, that want everything in the world to be equal, all the countries to be equal. That started them thinking.
Let me ask you a question here. Why? What's the thought behind this?
Because they're basically Marxists, like communists. Everybody should be equal.
Okay.
Now, if you remember, George Orwell in the late 1940s was a socialist. But then he realized he wrote books that pointed out some of the negative aspects of it. Now, one of the books I remember reading in 7th grade is called Animal Farm. Animal Farm.
Oh, Animal Farm. Yeah, of course.
In Animal Farm, you have all the animals collectively on a farm.
Right.
And the pigs who are running the farm, so basically would be like the Politburo. So that all the animals are not equal. And one of the pigs, Snowball and Napoleon, the two pigs, one of them says to the other, all pigs are equal. But some pigs are more equal.
Right.
That's the communist regime. Whether you look at it, whether it was the Soviet Union at the time in the 40s, or later the CCP after 1949, or later Cuba, all these countries that later became socialist. At the time, you really had the Soviet Union was the example. And that's what Orwell was writing about, what life had become under the Soviet Union. All pigs are equal. So if you have the Soviet Union, however, the Politburo is more equal. In the CCP, when you see Xi and you see all of the leaders of the Communist Party in that giant auditorium,
they're more equal.
They are more equal than the peasants out in the field.
Right.
So all people in China, not equal. People like Xi and the other communist commissioners, they're more equal than anybody. So, and then George Orwell wrote the other book that was the most famous, 1984.
Right.
In that, he describes how society, the more and more control Big Brother has over the people, the worse it will be. The more basically enslaved the population will be.
Right.
So these are generally people that follow the Marxist teachings of Karl Marx going back 100 years. Mm-hmm. Under Marxism, everybody should be equal. Everybody should be equal. So that's the globalists, basically are Marxists. They want all the countries, all the people in the countries, they want borders eliminated. So people that follow Marxism would follow the policy of the United States, eliminating border control, realistic border control at the southern border, at the northern border, basically saying, so what if 20 million people illegally come into the United States and weaken the United States through a lack of assimilation? That's great. So now what I was trying to say is that the leaders of the World Economic Forum, the so-called globalists, and one of their biggest leaders is George Soros, multimillionaire. They're basically saying, okay, we're unable to raise up the rest of the world to the U.S. level. So that leaves the second choice, bring the U.S. down. And that's their policy of have chaos in the United States, weaken our economy, weaken our military, weaken our culture. So the strength of U.S. culture is diminished to not have a leadership position in the world. That's what they want. And it's working very well.
Like Biden administration is like a branch of World Economic Forum.
Yes, in a way, yes.
Mm-hmm. So thank you so much. That's the first question. We're talking about 2024, why it's just so important and how we can fight for this nation. And come to the second question is about Newsom. You know what happened in California. They clean up everything, overnight. So what do you?
Here is what I've said about that. Newsom, who's basically a Marxist and incompetent. Now I'll go back. In the mid-1990s, for 3 years, I was an assistant in charge of the FBI office in San Francisco. So I lived in the East Bay, Danville, but our territory was basically Northern California. From Monterey to the Oregon border. Now, during that time, San Francisco was probably one of the most beautiful cities in the entire world.
Exactly.
Fantastic city. And then at that time, Willie Brown was the mayor and, flamboyant and popular. So when Brown no longer is mayor, Gavin Newsom becomes the mayor. Newsom, all of a sudden, we have all this homeless, tents on the street, homeless people, drug needles on the sidewalks, other human waste on the sidewalks. So Newsom dramatically diminishes the quality of life in San Francisco, particularly in the downtown beautiful business, the area of Union Square, the main business area downtown. Now, Newsom, he's not satisfied with what he did in San Francisco. He runs for governor of California. And now his policies are in the whole state. So the whole state has gone downhill. He recently told a lie. All of these businesses are moving into California. No, the statistics show they're moving out. Many of the people with money moving out. Many of the downtown areas, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, these other countries, higher crime, property values dropping, businesses leaving. So California, one of the most beautiful states in the world, is now the rural areas still have the beauty, but his policies are helping to bring down the whole state and the quality of life and the resources through taxation and property values and all of that have gone downhill. Now, Gavin Newsom has decided that's not good enough. Let's do it for the whole country. Run for president and bring down the whole country. That's the path he's on if he becomes the candidate for president and if he gets elected president. Now, meantime, getting back to the visit of President Xi from China, Newsom goes to China recently. All the photo opportunities. You see him playing basketball where he runs over the one little kid. has to pick him up. But anyway, Newsom invites Xi, please come to San Francisco. And he's coming. So as a result, massive cleanup campaign to make San Francisco beautiful again, which they're doing. Now, I have said that the way to cure the homeless problem in the United States is invite President Xi to come to every big city in America. And then they'll clean up all these big cities for his visit.
Blue cities.
Well, it's all the blue cities that are like that. I don't know of a red city that has that problem. They take care of keeping their city clean and justice and law and order. Now, the other thing I had mentioned earlier that the globalists wanted to bring down the United States.
Right.
Now, one of the most brilliant plans to do it was George Soros's plan. He gives millions of dollars to political action committees.
Right.
And they donate millions of dollars to prosecutors to get them elected, and they won't prosecute. That's the idea. So that felons, whether it is in LA or San Francisco or New York or Chicago, crime is rampant.
Right.
It's unsafe to go downtown. And people are moving out. Businesses are moving out. They're moving to states like Florida or Texas, maybe Arizona, but they're leaving the blue states, the blue cities, that the quality of life has gone so bad so quickly. Now in San Francisco, I mentioned working there, the main downtown luxury shopping area, Union Square in San Francisco, all of those more expensive, the Nordstroms and the stores like that.
They closed, right?
They closed. They got out because looters were coming in and taking all their stuff off the shelves, breaking into jewelry stores, taking everything. And you would have 60 or 70 people storm into the store and overwhelm the store.
Right.
And so is what's going on.
Right.
In San Francisco, LA, and other cities. We see this looting. And then you have the extremely liberal people that support that, like Alexandria Cortez in Congress, AOC. She says, they're doing that so they can get food. How much, you go to a fancy jewelry store, you see any kind or milk or eggs in Nordstrom's?
Ridiculous. This woman, I don't think they love this country.
No,
so
they should not.
How do they become a
so-called squad? The so-called squad, and their people reelect them in their district. Now she actually heard her district 2-3 years ago, because Amazon wanted to put in a big facility in her congressional district in New York, and she got it killed. So they didn't. It would have meant high-paying jobs to thousands of the people living in her congressional district. She killed it.
Right. Oh, it's ridiculous. So what do you think, why Newsom's more care about what she want rather than what his voters want?
These Democratic politicians, they don't care what their voters want. They only hope their voters keep electing them, which they do. As I pointed out, AOC, she makes bad decisions that hurt her district, hurt her residents of her district. So what? They still reelect her.
Why? So who are these people? I just don't understand. If the first time you don't know who AOC are, then you vote for her, I understand. But the second time, you still do that? So that's a big problem.
Yeah, there's an old expression, fool me once, shame on you.
Yeah.
Fool me twice, shame on me.
Yeah, exactly.
What's happened. These districts have elected these people more than one time, over and over. And it doesn't matter. They still do it. So you're right. I don't get it. I don't know if it's actual just stupidity or just a habit. They voted Democratic all their life. They're going to keep doing it.
Or the possibility is the Democrat already controlled the whole election.
Well, that too. So that's the other issue, is how much election fraud is going on. I think a lot, nobody wants to talk about it. And anybody that talks about it, they say, that's a conspiracy theory.
Right.
Well, not really.
See, yeah. So that's Newsom. And also let's go back to New York City. Adam, the Mayor Adams. Right now, I just heard that FBI is checking on him. So I
Yeah,
just thought
they
this
have an
FBI
investigation.
change
Yeah,
their
they have an
attitude.
investigation on him
Right,
that he accepted illegal contributions from
oh,
Turkey.
right.
Turkey is trying to build a consulate in New York City, and they
Mm-hmm,
want his help to take care of the building inspections and some of those issues.
mm-hmm,
So anyway, supposedly he's been dealing with Turkey to do many of the things that benefit
mm-hmm,
Turkey in opening the consulate
mm-hmm,
and then accepting campaign money and other contributions from them.
mm-hmm.
Now, you can do that. The law in the US is that then you must register as an agent of a foreign power.
Right, right.
And then during his campaign, he'd say, okay, I'm accepting money for Turkey. I'm an agent for Turkey. Okay. But he didn't. Now, the reason we have a two-tier justice system is one of Trump's leading campaign advisors was Paul Manafort.
Mm-hmm.
He was determined that he had taken money from Ukraine as a consultant to the government. This is before Hunter Biden and all of that. He accepted money as a consultant, but he didn't register as an agent of a foreign power.
Mm-hmm.
Foreign Agent Registration Act, which is FARA. The name
Right.
of the violation becomes FARA.
Mm-hmm.
Manafort gets convicted and sentenced to several years in prison for doing that. Fair.
Okay.
So Trump pardons him, then he gets out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Hunter Biden, and at the time, the Bidens do exactly that for the Ukraine, only on a way bigger scale.
Right.
Hunter Biden's never even been charged with FARA.
Right.
No problem. Go do what you want, Hunter, because you're a Democrat and you're son of the president now. Mm-hmm. So not held accountable or liable for doing that. So now Eric Adams does the same thing. He's the leading Democrat, mayor of the biggest city, which happens to be a Democrat city. Mm-hmm. So that's all fine, except what happens. A couple months ago, he starts criticizing the administration. Our city is getting overrun by migrants. Our hotels are getting overrun and being ruined, being banned, being just, destroyed property and other issues. Mm-hmm. And then recently he becomes even more vocal, criticizing the administration.
Exactly.
So he doesn't say Joe Biden's doing this, but the administration is Joe Biden. Uh-huh. Now all of a sudden, what happens? Investigations open. The FBI goes, they seize his computers, his iPads, and his phones, and his phone records to get the evidence that, he was making calls, receiving calls from that government to help that government. That's why they want the records, gather evidence that he violated FARA. Suddenly, the leading Democratic mayor in the country is under investigation because he criticized the administration strenuously. He said recently, they're going to make New York City go bankrupt. We're going to go bankrupt with all these migrants coming here. So
he's telling the truth.
Yes, the truth, of course.
Wow. So
but if you're a Democratic mayor or a governor, you have to be very careful how much criticism you give to the administration, the Biden administration. So whether it's Illinois or these other jurisdictions, well, they can say we wish there was less migrants here, but they can't say the administration is letting too many in and we're going to go bankrupt. That's going too far.
Well, it's really, to me, it's really typical Communist Party operation.
Absolutely.
The central has the absolute power to control.
You become an enemy, you're under investigation, or they arrest you, or they bankrupt you, or they seize your business, whatever.
Right. So, Tom, what do you think about people's weakness? How many American people realize that we are on the wrong direction?
Which... why I think they don't is because, for the most part, most people, and probably many of the people don't pay attention to all the politics, don't watch the news. They're kind of aloof. And as long as they're making money and they're able to support their family and do what they want to do, basically, then they kind of ignore all the details or all the rest of it. So I think that's why, is because the negative aspects of these policies have only impacted people so much, not completely, but so much. So when you have inflation right now, I think so many people just get used to it. Okay, food costs more, gas costs more. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. But they have enough money to pay for it. They just get used to it. New normal. So I think that to me is part of it, is that they're very complacent about what's going on because it doesn't severely affect them to the point where, boy, we need to fix this. This is terrible. This is desperate. Yeah, it's not good, but it'll get better. It's okay. That's why.
Well, so if this is a situation, people needs to, I hate to say that, but they must be hurt more to realize what's going on. Is that the
Yes.
fact?
Yeah, it's not gone bad enough yet.
Oh,
No, it's true.
that's a
For
reality.
mainstream people. Now, this is why I said before that immigrants from China that have come to the United States in the last 15, 20 years, including my wife, as I mentioned,
Yeah,
when
that's
they come here, they really appreciate the
right,
United States. They
right.
know what it was in China, what it still is in China. And many still have parents, brothers, sisters living in China. So
Mhm.
they hear they
Mhm.
can't move, they can't travel, they can't, the social credit system might
Right,
eliminate their ability to buy a train ticket, plane ticket, get a passport. That they're punished for
right.
violations of social credit. So they see that. And so they are very, very patriotic to the United States
Mhm.
because they see how bad it could be, especially where they left China.
Right.
Now, many of the immigrants crossing freely into our southern border, you see many from Venezuela.
Mhm.
Venezuela, uh, 20 years ago, was one of the richest countries in South America.
Mhm.
Tremendous oil exports, many of the things. And then the administration of Venezuela changes. It becomes a Marxist country. Now
Mhm.
it's a socialist and a communist country. And then now it's one of the poorest countries.
Right.
That's how they do it. It becomes poor. Other countries, similar types of Cuba,
Mhm.
glaring example. Uh,
Mhm.
Before Castro came to power, yes, they had a crooked president of Cuba,
Mhm.
um, very corrupt. And he had the mafia, had casinos there, and all, similar to like Las Vegas.
Mhm.
And anyway, the people decide to rise up, and then they allow Fidel Castro to take over.
Mhm.
The Castro regime, the communist regime of Cuba, has been there basically since 1960.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
all these years, and now Cuba, when you see pictures of Cuba now, how poor the people are. You see cars on the street that are 60 years old. You
Mhm.
see all of that when it was one of the richest countries in the Caribbean, vacation destination.
Right.
And it was always a better destination than Las Vegas, because if you're a New Yorker and you wanted to go see shows and gamble, that's
Mhm.
about a 2-hour flight to Havana, not a 3 or 4 hour flight cross country to go to
Right.
Las Vegas.
Mhm.
So communism takes Cuba down to the level it is right now. So China, Russia then becomes the Russian Federation. The Soviet Union is no longer communist.
Mhm. Right.
It's gone back, in fact, it's no longer atheist. It's gone back to be a Christian Orthodox country.
Right.
So,
Right. Right.
yeah, so you have the situation where you can absolutely look at countries in most people's lifetimes that were ruined by becoming socialist and then communist.
Right. Right. Right.
And most people, if their life is good, they don't care. Complacent, ignorant, maybe stupid, yeah, all of the above. And that's how so many things can go so bad in a short period of time. And most of the people, except when they go to the gas pump to fill their car, it costs twice as much. Or
They know.
except the grocery store, eggs are $4 instead of $2 a dozen, or milk, or whatever they're buying.
Right.
Oh, it costs more. But then they kind of get used to it. We've had this inflation for the whole time with Biden. people have gotten used to it almost. You don't hear people screaming about the high cost of food or oil or some of those kind of issues. So I think Americans, and generally many philosophers, modern philosophers, have basically said the United States citizens are spoiled, complacent, ignorant. They don't study what's going on. They don't follow politics. They don't look at the news. What's happening in my country? So what? And so that's why you have many philosophers saying that what's happening to America now is kind of like what happened to the Roman Empire in the later days of Rome.
Right.
The people became immoral. They just wanted to have orgies and parties and all of that. The country got to a point where it really couldn't afford to send the military all over the world. So they were losing money. They were losing the ability to support the population. And it just gradually went downhill. Now, the law and order in the Roman Empire was the response. Their police were called centurions. And there was a movie made here in the 1970s called The New Centurions with the actor George C. Scott and other famous people in the movie playing a police officer. George C. Scott is training a young policeman. So he's like his mentor. And they're sitting in a bar after work one night. And George C. Scott is philosophizing with the young officer. And he says, this is how the Roman Empire fell. And he describes what I just said. And then he said, that's happening in the United States. People don't want law and order. They don't mind, the corruption and all of this thing. They're not against it. And now we are the new centurions. Now that movie was made 50 years ago. And if you were to watch it today, I have a copy of the movie. If you watch it today, the issues that are raised by the police and by George C. Scott are the same today. The only way you could tell that movie was made 50 years ago is because the cars on the street are 50 years old.
Otherwise, it's exactly the same.
Exactly the same. Exactly the same as what's happening. So it shows that we're on a longer term decline. It hasn't happened overnight. And we have probably more ways to go. But the immorality, for instance, the activities that people did for parties and sexual perversion and deviation, any of those things, now we have drag queens in our grade schools.
I know.
Performing for children. We have those kind of activities, and we think that's fine. Oh, that's fine. That's normal. And it's not. It's the sexualization of our children, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, should be just eliminated, not supported. It's still supported.
It's to the point that normal people cannot bear anymore. So it's to be or not to be moment right now.
Yeah. I know. Well, I would agree to a point, although I think we're not quite at the end yet. Now, even if the Democrats get elected in 2024, it'll make it worse. We'll be further on the road to destruction. I don't know if we'll quite be there. And I don't know at what point middle America is going to rise up and say, no more of this. No more. So it's kind of going back to Trump's motto. Will he get elected next year on the motto, still make America great once again, again and again? We don't know. We will see.
Yeah. So
here's part of the problem too, is that our media is corrupted. So most people, if they're watching mainstream media in the United States, they're not hearing the truth. If they're listening to press conferences by our government, by Joe Biden, by the spokesman for the military, they're not hearing the truth. By our economic leaders, not hearing the truth. Mayorkas, one of the biggest liars ever. He's saying he's the secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. He's in charge of border security.
He's a big liar.
Exactly. He's testifying recently again for probably the 20th time that, the borders are secure. That is a lie. You see the video of thousands of people going across the border. So, yeah, it's a complete lie.
So all they did, the bad things, lies, everything is hopefully is a ring bell for wake up people.
We
Otherwise,
hope.
yeah,
We hope.
we hope so. That's why I have the privilege to invite you to the show to tell people the truth, to try to wake up more people. That's the only hope of us to save the nation.
Right. And speaking of the truth, keep telling the people to watch the podcast that I co-host
Yeah,
called Operation Truth with Lou Palumbo and Tom Fuentes.
right, right.
So we put out 2 episodes a week, Tuesday morning and Thursday morning, and it goes on YouTube, Rumble, TikTok, Spotify, Amazon Podcast, Apple Podcast, so all these different platforms.
Did
And
you
I
put on,
understand.
excuse me, did you put on X, the Twitter?
We've done, yeah, we've done on Twitter. They
Okay.
have an evening show that we've done that people send in questions and we do that
Oh,
live. We can have people call in live.
that's
We're
great.
just starting with that program or that ability using Twitter. So that's
That's
true.
so
Now,
Operation Truth.
now YouTube and Google will do what they can to silence or reduce the audience of people like me, people like you. So you have shadow banding, for instance, you have various techniques. Google owns YouTube, so they do these techniques, and they're in court right now in a massive lawsuit over this, what they're doing to silence competition, things like that. One of the big beneficiaries, if they lose the lawsuit, will be Rumble. Rumble will be able to, because Rumble has accused YouTube of hurting them unfairly. So
Mhm.
that could happen. Now, the people that run the production company that our podcast is on have said to us, even though if you go on YouTube, so our newest episode went out this morning. If you open that episode, it'll say viewers 300 or 100 or whatever.
Yeah.
And the production company that's in Nashville that's able to actually track the total number of viewers on all of these platforms are telling us that last week or the week before, we had more than 2 million viewers.
2 million
2
viewers.
million viewers. And
Wow.
yet, here's YouTube saying we had a couple hundred.
Right. I
So,
see the number and I just think it's not right.
no, it's not.
But
It's
I
not. They
really
lie. They get
it's
away with
2
lying.
million.
Right.
That's a very good number though.
And among the biggest platforms for us, TikTok.
Ah, okay. So
Young and a lot of young viewers on TikTok.
I see. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, thank you so much, Tom, for your information and for your views and everything, for your opinions. Very valuable to us. And we have 1 minute. Do you want to say something?
Ask me something else. Be happy to.
So one of our audience said, if the battle happened in the world happened in the American and Biden was said this is wartime. So only what you can do on the election is only mail ballot. So what we can do? Will that happen? Do you think it will happen?
I don't know. I think that I'm trying to be optimistic. And I think that the reason I'm a little bit optimistic is because our Operation Truth podcast is going on and gaining audience every week. Mm-hmm. Your podcast is going on the air, and I see getting more audience, more support. And the audience that you're trying to reach, you're reaching. There's an expression in English that you and I are preaching to the choir, meaning we're at the front of the church giving the message, preaching, and right. the choir already was a supporter. They don't need to be persuaded. People in the audience need to be persuaded. Right. So we preach to the choir. But members of the choir are also citizens, and their families are citizens. And so the more people
we
can reach,
right,
and watch our podcast in spite of what the producers say, or I mean, in spite of what the owners of YouTube's owned by Google. So in spite of them, if the actual truth is like Operation Truth, if the truth is millions of people are watching, and then they're sharing so that other friends start watching, they're subscribing, and so expand our audience and make it official that more and more people are watching and paying attention and listening. Now, I think in the months ahead, I think there will be more audience because there'll be more interest with the election coming. It's going to gather much more of an audience in the future.
Of course.
So we talk about our guests. What are they doing to Donald Trump with all of these indictments? What are they doing to the conservatives? What are they doing to pro-life people that want to have, not have fewer abortions in society, or other conservative voices that they're trying to silence? So, that's what we're looking at, is the conservative voices get more and more and get heard, get an audience, get people listening and paying attention, and basically not be complacent, not say, well, we've always heard these things over the years, things are bad, they're getting worse, like storm predictions. There's going to be a tornado, there's going to be a hurricane. It is that. Yeah, this is different. It's much more spread out. More people are following this nonsense and believing it. And unlike the revival of the silent majority in 1968 that elected Nixon after all of the riots and demonstrations over the Vietnam War or civil rights, that the conservatives then rode up and said, that's enough. We've heard enough. We're going to elect Nixon. Law and order. He's going to be strong. Now what's happening is we're waiting for middle America to rise up and thinking, we're going to hopefully reach them. But if they're not hearing the messages, or if elections are rigged, or there's a certain amount of cheating with drop-off ballots, drop boxes, that type of thing, that's serious. But we want more and more people to realize it's happening, to become educated to what's happening, and then do something about it to try to help eliminate it.
Right. Well, thank you so much for doing that. And I'm really honored can do the job with you together.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and our audience is the same. You guys are listening and you guys are spreading the truth, and then we're all on the same boat. We do it together.
Right.
Thank you so very much, and look forward talk to you next week, sometime next week, and then we can discuss more about how they try to surpass the conservative voice, which we need to bring it out to that much people. Thank you so much again, Tom.
Well, thank you, Cheyenne. I appreciate your putting me on and putting out this word.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and enjoy your vacation.
Okay. Take care.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you. 好，我现在再待几分钟啊，看一下这些朋友的留言哈。那就是今天我们主要是3个问题，第一个问题就是为什么2024那么关键，第二个问题就是让他谈一下 Newsom 啊，对这个习近平来访去做一个非常大的这样一个清理的动作，那后面说明了他是怎么来看这个问题。第三个就是关于纽约市长被 FBI 查的这件事情啊，他给了一个很不错的一个观点哈。那就是我先快快的跟朋友们打个招呼，然后我就接下来做中文的这样的一个节目，就是把就是现在我们做的英文的节目给他大概的总结一下给大家哈。看一下萤火虫好，老虎归真，哎你好，这个萤火虫点赞谢谢费你好，We the people 谢谢 Tom 哈 ，Tom 的料太多了。愿上帝祝福这位勇敢的退休高级官员。是的，他知道的情况很多很多哈，所以可以跟我们分享的也很多。雾你好 ，Chin Chin 你好，谢谢你。House 说昨日香港，今日旧金山，明日加州，后天就全美国，这个他们的这个步子很清楚啊。另外这个 Jane In 你好 Fans 啊，刚才他的问题就是说美国人能做什么，还有美国人能做什么去防止这个选票造假。那其实美国人可以做的和正在做的事情很多。那他们主要的一个意思啊，就是说要唤醒更多的美国人来去在2024投出正确的票。那他也谈到说，其实很多美国人是对于这些问题没有那么敏感的。没，就是说有一些麻木的哈，这个在他的谈话当中，他有一部分专门就谈到这个问题。好，那今天的这个英文的这个部分我们就在这儿结束哈，下一个部分呢，我们来做中文的哈，等会儿再跟大家一起聊。好，谢谢您拜拜。